Ready, Ted? We're live.
Okay, good evening, everybody. If I could call the regular meeting to order, and we'll do the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you for that. If I could get a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda?
Motion?
Can I get a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, on to community open forum. It's going to be a little different now. If we could, the board would like to recognize Katie Hassler, bus driver, and Lisa Wall Carter, monitor, are being recognized for the bus accident that took place recently where two deer hit the side of the bus.
So it was an SUV. It wasn't even a bus. So Jason, if you can kind of set the stage for that, because I always love to demonstrate whenever we have an accident, it could be so much worse if it wasn't for how our drivers react to it, but then also how they still manage to keep students calm.
Yeah, so we have just recently transporting one student visually impaired to the Batavia school. So I was all excited to have Katie and Lisa going to Batavia. Starts at, she's at the bus garage 4:30 in the morning, pick up the student to drive to Batavia. I get a phone call at about a little after 5. She says, "Jason, you aren't going to believe this." Of course, it's a dark night. Deer are moving. She says, 2 deer came out and struck the side of the SUV, and it's completely totaled.
Airbags.
All the airbags deployed. So I says, "Is everybody okay?" So she says, "Yes." So I start the process. I'm trying to get a hold of the parent. Can't get a hold of her. So I call Tom. "Tom, this is what's happened. Is everybody all right? Did you get a hold of the parents?" And we didn't get a hold of the parents, but as the airbag struck, the student didn't even know really what had happened. So he says, "What was that?" And Lisa, a brand new monitor, she reaches behind and says, "Are you okay? It was just a deer." And the student says, "Yeah, I'm okay." He says, but are you okay?" So just to hear that student, just reconfirming that the driver and a monitor and the job that they did, phenomenal, especially on the side of 81. So I just want to, recognize them as well. So come on up.
Yeah.
Lisa and Katie.
When something like that happens, as a parent myself, you want to make sure that the child on the bus, especially in this case, where the child didn't have the ability to see, right? And so 100% relied on you guys, but if you lost your cool and you panicked, the student would also, that would have been extremely traumatic. So when he called me at 5:15 and my heart stopped of what was happening, but the first thing I thought of was my parent hat, that I'm so glad that we have people like you that can react like that and then still keep that child calm. That could have been probably one of the most traumatic experiences that kid could go through, not knowing what was happening, but your reassurance. I watched the video. I'm so impressed by both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Awesome story.
You do not have to stick around for the rest of the whole meeting. You can have a good night.
We have a couple very great presentations. You're more than welcome.
Capital project, but you're good to take off.
Yep, you're good to go. Thank you so much. And so we'll go on to item D, special presentation of board. We'll have, bye.
Thank you.
Watch out for the deer.
Thank you.
We'll have King and King make the presentation for the capital project update and building condition survey.
Everything's got to be turned on. I got it. Yeah. Well, good evening, everyone. It's been a while since we've been in front of you to chat about the projects. Let's get right into it. So we've come a long way since COVID, and we were able to implement the 2 phases of the latest capital project work with the whole timeline and the movement of kids in and out of Hastings, Mallory, and A.A. Cole, which really went according to plan. So we, this team, the district included, and Turner and King, with all the factors out there in the world that we've been dealing with in the last 3 years, we were able to accomplish a lot of things for the district. So we're really proud of everything that we were able to get done. There's a few, odds and ends that we're working on right now. If you recall, we started out with this $25 million referendum amount. This is going to be our final budget. We spent as close to that $25 million as we possibly could and get as much as we possibly could. So with that, I'm going to just turn it over to Turner for a second, and they're going to talk a little bit about the last remaining little bits of that project.
Right, so in terms of changes in contract values, currently I'm working alongside prime contractors to finalize change orders and potential change orders and begin the final payment application process with them. Punch list, all areas have been punch listed and values have been established for each of the punch list items, so we do have those values for the final pay app process. Closeout documentation, again, team is working alongside district's fiscal advisors, and I'm providing them with the information they need in order to begin the process for final cost reports. And then in terms of just project closeout and submission, again, working alongside King and fiscal advisors with final change orders, and I know Tom knows, getting all the SED certification sheets, signs, and everything like that. Over to Kirk.
I think the most important part of this is that we always work very closely, this entire team, with fiscal advisors. The goal is to get the final closeout stuff in to SED so that you can start receiving aid. And we're going to be doing that over the course of the next month. So that's where we're at with the current capital project. And I know you've all been around to see a lot of the areas that we've worked on. As I mentioned, we've done a lot. Probably the biggest, most proud moment is to finally get the road in at the middle school. We've talked about since I've been here. So it was good to finally be able to get all that in. Any questions about the current project? Okay. All right, let's jump into where we are with the next stage, because there always seems to be momentum with doing project work, and there's a good reason for that. If you recall, every school district is required to do a building conditions survey of their buildings. It used to be every 5 years, and it used to be that every district did it the same year, which was clearly an impossible task, particularly for the state of New York, because we would crash their website every January when they opened it, when we had to put 700 school districts into the common system. The reason for the building conditions survey, which has been around since 2000 when Carl Thurnow, the director of facilities at that time, established it, was to create basically benchmarking data for how the legislative bodies can distribute building aid in the budgetary cycles. And so what the building conditions survey is meant to do is to quantify the mass of work that's potentially floating out there for the state to do, and then they try to budget accordingly within that massive amount of funds for the building aid that districts can receive as part of that. So for you, we went to a rotating 5-year cycle, so it's 1/5 of all the schools in New York State that do this now. Your year was in 24, which was recently uploaded in February of this year to their website. So we have this very current data of the building condition surveys for all your buildings and assets, and how that relates to work that still has yet to be done, as well as documenting the work that's been done, so that we've got a good understanding of that cycle of effort. So that's all done through walkthroughs by my team, our engineers, and Turner, and then we evaluate and put prices to all of those potential components, mostly looking at items that have reached their effective life in kind of a 5 to 10 year period of time. And then we use this master spreadsheet, basically a long-range plan, to inform our decision-making process as we move forward to future planning of projects. And so that's really the most important aspect of it. So we're doing that right now. And from a time frame standpoint, well, let me talk about costs. And don't be shocked, because there's an overall need of, 400 million some odd dollars, which you have a lot of buildings. And I can tell you that in all of the districts that we work in, it's atypical that we don't have an infrastructure need of less than a couple $100 million at any given time. You add more buildings to that mix, and it just kind of exacerbates the total cost. And this is an updated and representative total of what came out of the building conditions survey. And one of the big items, if you'll notice on this list by building, is that it's almost $200 million to just fully air condition all of the buildings. One of the new things that came out of the environmental, executive action that the governor took with the heat maximums in school buildings is that there was a requirement that schools evaluate the ability to potentially add air conditioning to the buildings. When this all started, as is almost everything with New York State, it always comes without any backing of funds. And so they make these edicts, and then we all scramble around to try and figure out how do we accomplish it. That's where we're at. There is no funding to add air conditioning to school buildings unless it falls under your maximum cost allowances that currently exist for your schools. But every school, the air conditioning alone, for the most part, exceeds the capacity of the building to get aid on that, just from that one element. And the reason is that most of everybody's school buildings were built, at the turn of the century or post-World War II. They weren't built for air conditioning. And so to go in and put air conditioning in these buildings requires us to remove ceilings, add electrical infrastructure, run piping that was never meant to be a system in these buildings. So it's a tall task. It requires a lot of demolition, a lot of disruption, and a lot of cost. So we're roughly using, for all of our clients, kind of a baseline of around 15 to 20 million per building, regardless of size, as kind of a starting point to be able to accomplish all of that. So it's a heavy lift. So for you, it's about $200 million. It's something that we're just going to keep on the horizon in our planning efforts, and where we find the opportunities to be able to do that, we will try and fit that into a capital project. Most school districts are moving towards the big ticket areas, auditoriums, places of assembly as the air-conditioned areas, without necessarily having to do all the classrooms, so that at least you have an area of respite that you could take students and not have to close the building down. So that's how we're dealing with that. What these numbers are going to translate into in the future, and pretty shortly, is it will inform the decision-making process for the next project. So it starts with these numbers, and we're going to prioritize them by building, and then we're going to back into a comfortable number that the district believes that it can undertake based on capital reserves, any debt service that might be coming off, and a whole bunch of other calculations that your fiscal advisors will run. So it's kind of a multifaceted process that we're going to look at. The schedule of which is completely flexible, but we have to start somewhere. So I worked on this with my team and with Maureen, just to come up with a place to start. Generally speaking, we have all the information we need to start a planning process. So we could, start it, as soon as we get this other project closed out early next year. We would take the information from the building condition survey, and we would essentially start a pre-referendum process to kind of gather everyone's thoughts on all of these different items, to come up with a kind of a long-range plan of how we're going to implement these things, if we choose to do that. If we follow that path, you would then potentially vote in the fall of this year, December of '26. Maureen and I talked about predominantly in the past, you've done it with the budget. That's not an ideal time to vote a project. Most districts don't do that. And the reason why May is a rough time to vote capital projects is from a timing perspective. It's generally a year for any amount of planning and documentation to get from a vote and approvals from SCD to then actually bid a project. That May vote puts us in a situation where, under any scenario, we're almost always bidding in early to late spring, which is a horrible time to bid a project. We've dealt with it. It's just, what we all decided that we were going to do. But what it does is it almost takes off the table any amount of valuable work that could be done in that first summer, because it's not enough time to bid a project, get contracts signed, and then get materials on site in time to take advantage of any of that downtime during the summer. So, but it's not off the table. We've done it. But ideally, if you can vote a project in that November, December timeframe, that's great. Then you move into bidding, and, early '28, you award contracts, and, maybe the first summer of potential work is in.
Yeah, because I don't think the last two capital projects, weren't they on the regular budget vote? If, yeah. Right,
Right.
right. Right, yeah. I just, in my head, that's how I remembered it.
Yep.
It was part of the budget vote. And I will say that we visited Liverpool last week, and they're just finishing up their security project.
Yes.
So thumbs up to you guys. And
So, I mean, that's the other thing of having it in May. It worked for us in the past. One of the things, like what you ran into, is the bidding, right? And so that kind of puts us behind the eight ball. But the other thing that kind of aligns to is we're most likely going to be able to get the first approval for the electric bus waiver, hardship waiver, which will be coming out in December. But then for the second one, what we're hearing is that the districts that are going to be able to get that are going to be the ones that have proven that they've put it out to bid, like a referendum vote.
Right.
And so that we definitely in this area do not want to have an electric bus tied to our budget. But if it's tied to a December vote, you know what I mean? Like, because we're going to have to do it at some point, right? And it's costly to have these votes.
Yes.
So in my mind, it seems to make sense to be able to align it in like a December one.
Yeah. Well, look, all the options are always on the table, and all of this will come together when you decide that that's when you want it to come together. And there's a lot of variables in this mix. So it's always good to get something on the table so that we can kind of use that as a guidepost, and then we'll make adjustments as we get into it if that's something that the district decides that they want to pursue, and, and we get all of the details that we need to start making educated decisions.
It's not our debt service, those are 15-year loan debt. Set every 5 years, but not necessarily on the vote date. It's on the day that we submit. They're rolling, and so that's another factor in here. For some of those that we talked about, so we have money there.
No, yeah, it is about right, yeah.
Yeah.
We, Right.
Yeah. Correct. Well, and we'll have a little bit more time to see with the because the electric bus mandate, it's going to happen whether they give us extensions or whatnot, or they move the deadline. But that's going to result in significant capital or foundation work at that bus garage to be able to, support those charging stations. So that's going to be a capital project in itself. It has to be.
Yes.
Right. Right. Right.
Some.
Yeah, if you could have that figured out by next week, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, we haven't, we don't have a lot of examples of districts that have been as successful in that realm yet because they're just not getting the votes through, and the infrastructure costs are not getting reimbursed the way that they should because SED right now still allocates roughly 50% of the infrastructure costs for the electric bus to transportation aid and not building aid. So it's not the same aid, and it makes it less achievable. But back to Maureen's comment about the maximum cost allowances. When I looked at this a couple weeks ago, for the most part, your resets happen on a 5-year cycle, and from the larger previous projects, they will be reset by the time we submit this project on this timeline. The buildings that are always going to be sensitive are the elementary schools, because they already don't generate enough aid as a maximum cost allowance as a middle school or a high school does. So we're always behind in those buildings regardless. And so any amount of money that's not available under that MCA is always going to cause struggles with some of the elementary schools, depending on the timing of that. So that's why there's so many variables. We got to figure out what's the need, what are the buildings, and then how do we package that to maximize everything? And if different dates are involved, then so be it. We'll figure that out. That's where we're at. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to just say from my seat, my position, I cannot thank you enough. I come from a construction background, and the projects were really, really awesome is the best way to describe it. And it really, on time, you just didn't hear it. I mean, traffic patterns are going to be traffic patterns no matter what we do. But other than that, it really, the moving of the elementary schools, I mean, it was a big accomplishment. I want to thank you for it. So,
Absolutely.
job well done.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, now my most favorite presentation of the year.
We get two.
We get two.
Yes.
Right. You should be able to follow these colors. There's not as many. All right, so this is kind of our recap from June, and where we're at. So this is where we ended our dibbles, and again, this is composite score, so this is all of the subtests that the kids take in one big pile, and then at the building levels, they dig down deeper to see where the initial area of concern is, remediate at that, and then start there and move up. So you can see there's growth being had. The green is good. The red is areas that they didn't show as much, and kids are, each cohort of children is different, so they're not super far off with that exception of kindergarten, and not too sure what happened there, to be completely honest, because our kindergarten numbers haven't looked like that in a while. Some things that we are doing, because while the numbers are good, the percentages are good, we do still have red, and we're not to the point where we want to be yet. So we are currently working with city BOCES, so just we take data and we do something with it, right? Like, it's not just up there to look at. So we are working with city BOCES because we are in the trenches all the time. So we have a third party, Liz Amiot, who is part of the coaster that we belong to, is coming in. And she has, last year she worked with Cole and went in and audited our skills classes, our foundational ELA classes where kids are learning how to read, to see, are we aligned with, is our practice aligned with what New York State's early literacy briefs are telling us? And she compared what she was seeing with best practices. So there were some areas that we needed to adjust and adapt, and Cole did that and saw great change. And they did it, that work was being done around February, so by the time they made changes, it was March, and they saw growth from March to June. So in just that short period of time, just by changing a few things, right? And some of it really, truly was expectations, that our kids, if you believe that your kids can do it, they can do it, and they did achieve that. So this year, we have her coming into Millard Hawk to do the same task, and she just finished Hastings Mallory to do the same thing. And again, some, praise the good things for happening, the strides that are being made, but then let's think about these few things that we can tweak and change to make sure that we're continuing to move forward and we've got the best practices in check. So that is some of what we're doing to try to make sure that the green continues to move green and that those reds turn to green. And then we also change, because one of the biggest focuses that we have is our oral reading fluency and the students' ability to write and understand what they're reading. So one of the things that we did is change, we have what we call the 5x5 form. So principals get into 5 classrooms for 5 minutes a day, and they just kind of check. It helps drive professional development for the buildings. We changed the form a little bit to reflect what is being seen with students actually reading. So are the students reading when the principals walk in? Are students discussing the text that they're reading, or are they, is it, I'm asking a question, you're answering it, that tennis game, and what is the writing that's being done, so that the students are really taking their knowledge and putting it to paper. Because you'll see in our ELA stuff, that is one of the areas that and that's why we're working on our writing, is our students struggle with those longer writing tasks. So we're working on that. So those are some things that we have in place to continue to move this momentum forward at the elementary level.
Lucky me, I get a slide with a lot of green. So our STAR math scores are looking good and going in an upward direction. I still wouldn't say anything below 50% is looking good, I guess is the wrong word. But again, STAR is like one assessment, right? So based on what we're seeing, we are seeing some improvement. 7th grade is no longer on there in 8th grade because remember, we switched to the state assessment allows you to use calculators. Therefore, the STAR doesn't, and we're not really assessing the same skill as the assessment, so we want to keep it consistent. So it's not compared to national data, because STAR says in 7th and 8th grade don't use a calculator. So if you don't see the other grades on there, that's why. But 5th and 6th grade, we do see some momentum moving forward, which we contribute a lot to AIS, and we're going to talk a little bit about the improvements and changes we've made with AIS. When we get to the state tests. So Regents exams, the English Regents, there's going to be a brand new one this year. So this is kind of, the trend is we're doing better than the year before, right? We went from 87 to 88. We were at 89, but we're consistently right there, 89, 88. It's always the Regents. Pretty much all of our students take that in 11th grade. But what we're seeing is that consistently kids are scoring well, but the Regents is changing this year. So we have to see what it looks like, how it's going to be different. And then New York Inspires is coming up in 2 years, and that'll change as well. In algebra, you see 22, 23, the 76%, that's grayed out. That's because that was the last year of that algebra Regents. The Regents changed in 23, 24, so that's only 1 year of data. We had 78% last year or the year before, and then we had 77. So again, we're still consistently in the high 70s as far as the algebra Regents, but it did change. So it's only the second time we're actually seeing the algebra Regents, what it's like, what it's asking our students to do, and how we're performing on it.
And part of the STAR math, so 2 years ago, we put in place Happy Numbers, which is a students take placement tests, and then it adjusts what the students are practicing to fill gaps district-wide at the elementary level, and they all use that for 15 minutes, roughly 5, 10, 15 minutes every day, some every other day, depending on their schedule. But I think that is helping to, because our main focus for AIS at the elementary level is getting our kids to be able to read and write. So that is kind of it doesn't replace a teacher ever, but it is helping those kids work on gaps that they have from the year before. So I think that some of that is contributing to that, because our students are showing growth on that. And it's very student-driven and student-friendly, so the kids, it's not a fight to get them on it, which is always good. So here are our ELA results, and we have it broken down by proficient, so the entire cohort of kids, and then we have it separated, our gen ed population versus our students with disabilities, and how they are performing, because that is a subgroup that we know that we are trying to work with and make gains so that they're hitting those same benchmarks at the same point in time. So you can see the data here. You can tell that when we get to that math, that our focus has been on ELA. Our math scores have always been better than our ELA scores, and this year that's not the case. So you can tell that our focus has really been in the ELA area, and we've made some changes with math to help. We've got to balance it down, right? One of the issues and one of the things that we really looked at this year was the constructed response. So the 4-point responses and the 2-point responses. And our kids are still struggling in that area, and that's why you can still see, as the text increases in complexity, so does the writing is supposed to also increase, and that is an area where we are working on improving. We went way back at the elementary level with our writing PD to really get the kids to write one good sentence and understand what makes a sentence. And because if you can't write a sentence, you're not writing a paragraph, and then you're definitely not writing an essay. So we did some work last year with some baseline writing, and we brought it way back so that we can, sometimes you do have to bring it back and go slow in order to move forward and go a little bit faster. So that is where we are, so that we can look at bringing up those constructed response parts, because the constructed response sections of the ELA assessment is weighted heavier than the multiple choice. It switched a handful of years ago now, so we are, that's where our focus is. And continue. And the more kids read and the more they're talking about their text, you will see that comprehension also improve in reading different types of text. So.
Okay, so in math, you'll see a little more red. And last year, Erin showed the middle school team, and then we pushed this out to the ELA department, BARS reports. And it's data that helps provide us, and we did the same with math, and they already started working on it on their superintendent's conference day, because we just got this information. So what the BARS report tells us is okay, so middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, gen ed, and basically their entire grade level, right? We see a decrease. So what we looked at is there are some questions that were released by the state. So for those questions, it tells us for multiple choice, what were the distractors? So if, more of our kids picked C, that'll help us figure out, okay, they're picking this, and then as a math person, we know why they picked C, right? We know why it was put as a distractor. So we're able to break down every question. So by her showing us the reports and pulling them for math, and math people love data, they are like sinking their teeth into that to find out, was it the way the question asks? Are we using the word characteristics of a quadrilateral, and it should be attributes, right? Like what language did we miss? What key vocab is in these questions? So it really helps for the release state questions, and then we can kind of start comparing based on the region. How are we doing? We're always doing pretty well compared to the region, but we don't want to just compare ourselves to, right? Oswego County, we're thinking bigger. So that data that's just coming out will tell us a little more about the work we need to do. So again, this is a goal it was last year's goal for us to improve, but now that we have these reports that can help us really dig down, and we have a department coordinator to be able to work with those, I'm looking forward to seeing what they find and what they think they need to change, because they already have common assessments. Their curriculum is already kind of mapped out as far as priority standards, so now it's about adjusting, right? What did we think was a priority? How did the state change what they said a certain percentage of the test is on what standards, and how can we make adjustments?
When I was at the middle school for the PD day, Jamie Brown was utilizing the new AI platform, putting in the bars data, but also the benchmarks. And she was like, we're able to get that data in seconds that wouldn't have had it before, and then have a conversation about that. Like an item analysis, looking at the ones they got wrong, why they
used to have to
get.
ask for time and then a substitute so that they can sit
Yes.
down and look at it, and it's just spitting it out in seconds for us, so we're able to get those. So I think those reports are really going to help as far as speaking to middle school math and where they're at.
And at the elementary level, we know that our students struggle, they don't have a good number sense, right? And if you don't have number sense, that's just like your letters and sounds. If you don't have that, you're not going to be able to read. So with changing to Eureka Math Squared, that is a much bigger focus of the program, and it spirals, and they've got some extra components in there. So they have this one assessment that's given periodically that is what they call the equip test. So it lets the teachers know what skills the students are missing to be able to be successful in this next unit or next couple units, so that they can then remediate that area to help them, and they have access to the entire unit, so, or the entire, from pre-K to fifth grade. So if they know they have to go back to, say, third grade, if they're a fourth grader or second grade, they can go right in and find, here's where that lesson, that concept was first taught. Go in there, get the material, see how it was taught. So I'm looking forward to, and we've told all the teachers, give yourself grace this year. You are learning a new program. We've had 2 PD days now, and the trainer that was just with 3-5 was fantastic the other day, really helping the teachers problem solve and figure out different nuances to the program. But I look forward to seeing what that has, and it also has some benchmarks built in, which we don't currently have for math. There's a lot of programs out there to remediate ELA, quick things that can give you quick data. There isn't for math. There just isn't. It's very long, time intensive. A lot of times it's one-on-one. So when we brought in Happy Numbers, that was one thing. And then the pieces that we were looking for are built into the math program. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it will do for us.
The state also put out numeracy briefs, and we are slowly but surely working on those numeracy briefs. And we have department coordinators as well as administrators getting trained in that. So really having a common understanding of number sense, what it means. And we all know the higher you get up in grades, the better sense of numbers you have, the easier you're going to understand the concepts and where they come from. And, math builds on each other. So if there's any gap, you're hurting later on, right?
Yep. And I just did an observation in 6th grade math, so I'm taking on the math, stepping very much outside of my comfort zone this year, and I felt good leaving the math class. I knew what was going on. I was very proud of myself. I was. So, but it's a different.
We said good sign for the teacher.
Yeah,
like Aaron got it.
that's
You're
right,
good.
you're
We're good. It's a different lens, though. It's a good idea because when you observe your own subject you taught, you're looking for certain things like, oh, I would use that word or blah blah. Where you have another perspective looking at it. I think it's going to be a really good idea.
Yep. So.
Well, graduation rate. I know we already mentioned this this summer when we got the rates out, but hooray to. I know some high school staff are here as well as administrators, but yeah, I mean, we're now at 90%, and the great news is look at the jump in the students with disabilities, right? That is huge, and that's something to be celebrated for sure.
And then our daily attendance rate, we have, Kristen and I were just talking about this earlier today too, because tomorrow is our first district attendance data meeting. So our daily attendance rate is very good. Our chronic absenteeism, we had one building that was no fault to the building, right? When you take students who live way out on the North Shore and you bring them into town, if they miss the bus, they're not getting here, and things like that. So we are really hopeful that Cole's attendance will improve this year by being back out on their own turf out there. But, some of this, and we make the CPS calls. I've been on the phone with Diane Godfrey about this. We do home visits. We do everything that we can think of. You look up any article and we're doing it, right? I mean, it's just, At the elementary level, it's really getting that parent buy-in, right? Like, you've got to get your child to school. Once it shifts middle school and high school, parents don't want to fight with their kids to get them up and get them to school, and kids do other things. So we continue to plug, we're not giving up, and we continue to do things to try to get kids here, incentives, and that's really what we're going to talk about tomorrow. And I'm having the committee pick 2 to 3 of their at-risk kids. Because if you're the chronic kids, but how can we prevent the kids from being chronic, right? So who are those 2 kids? And let's do a deep dive and look at, is it a day of the week? Is it, certain letter days where they've got a special or a certain class? And look for patterns and things like that, where sometimes when we're in a building, we kind of look bigger, but we're going to take the time to really dive. And those are going to be the kids that this committee tracks in each building this year to see what is the actual attendance plan for that student? What is being done? Is it working? Rather than tackling too much, starting there. Because if we can make just a few kids change, that will tick that number closer to green, so.
So we usually look at first marking period, so once, quarterly for,
Right.
trimester.
Trimester.
Trimester, but we usually pull reports right around the first marking period time for the most part, just to look to see, compare it to last year.
Right.
So the reports will tell us, but tomorrow, I think, is our big time.
Yeah.
To be running that report. I mean, they've never been down like that, there was some significance.
It was never this, which it kind of was that last year.
Yeah, and that's the same with us. Like, in every building, as you look at all of these, everyone drills down deeper, right? Like, these are very big picture data, but every building has their own goals, every department,
Right.
every grade level, so they really drill down into each one of these. But yeah, there was such a discrepancy with Cole that we figured that
Right.
has to be.
And there's, in working with School Tool, Ted has got us set up with a new analytics dashboard. So it gives us so much more information with attendance. I was poking around today, and I've got to spend probably 2 hours just getting comfortable with it, because it gives us so much data, and you can drill down into different things, and there's different areas to look at, and the reports tell you different things. So that's definitely, and it's brand new, so that's definitely a tool that we're going to be using this year. There's cool graphs at the very bottom, that chart, and you can see the kids. It's really interesting.
And we've talked big picture wise, like in newsletters from principals and different things, like post things like, hey, like January is a low attendance month. Let's get our kids that, just providing data for people, and, it doesn't hurt. I know sometimes the people that need to read it maybe aren't reading it, but it can't hurt to just consistently put it out there, right?
Value added.
Yep.
Any questions? Other questions?
I'll just take a big picture approach to this, and I can't thank you enough for the work that you do. I can remember what this used to look like going back years, okay? And this isn't anything, what you do in first grade really isn't gonna be for 6 or 7 years later, right? And then, but having the ability, as you've talked about, making change, looking at systems, working with teachers, all the things that you've just touched on, I think paint the picture of you're doing all of the right things. And I really can't thank you enough for what you do. And, for the administration, the principals, the teachers, I've always said it, this is just one leg of a stool, right? The data's the data, but it's every day. It's the teachers, it's the kids, it's the bus driver, it's everything together. But to see the numbers come in and the improvement that has been done, I was whispering to Tom, so I took this and run it through ChatGPT, give me an analysis, let's take a look at it, and it's really glowing to have, to have it all kind of look together and see improvements and really think of, we didn't hear how you would look at numbers in the 6th grade as to what students were being taught in the 3rd grade 6-7 years ago. That just wasn't going on. And that's work. I understand that it's work and it's dedication and thank you, really.
And the
Thank you.
teachers,
Job well done.
they They do whatever is asked of them, and not begrudgingly. Like, they've got their true best interest at the kids at heart, and if they have questions, they ask, and that they're comfortable with that. So the observation I just did Wednesday, going back and forth, and he said, I've got some questions, and I'm meeting with him Wednesday morning. So it's, when you've got that, and they're not afraid to come to either one of us, that's when change happens, because
And
you can
that's
have
not easy.
conversation.
In a leadership position, that is not easy to accomplish, okay? For all the folks out there, all the 5 people are going to watch this, that is not easy to do, okay? It's a very hard leadership thing to get accomplished, and you've done it, so.
And I don't think the general public realizes the extent of literacy, like the importance of it. I welcome anybody to look at what our curriculum consultants do. I mean, I'm fascinated watching Toby St. John's. I'm fascinated in the middle school level with Travis Knight. But the data that everybody agrees on is that if a student is not reading on grade level at the end of 3rd grade, they're 4 times less likely to graduate with their cohort. And if they come from poverty, which we have extensive clusters of poverty around our district, it's another 9. So that right away, that's 13 times less likely to be able to graduate high school with their cohort. And if you look at any state math test, it looks like a reading test with all of the word problems and whatnot. So it's, I've had other superintendents that are like, Chris Byrne just recently said it. Wow, looking at your state report card of Central Square across your grade levels, how are you guys doing it? And again, I tell them that, Aaron has led the focus on the science of reading. I still remember that presentation on Scarborough's rope that you did and phonemic awareness and whatnot, but it's easy to just say that here. But when I go to the buildings and I'm seeing the teachers and their time dedicated to literacy doesn't look like it did 10 years ago. And so it's phenomenal to see that. So it's a testament to you guys.
No, and then, you hear of the reading scores in other parts of the state, right? I won't call them out too much, and then to look at what we are doing here in Central Square, it is light years, really. And so I understand in this position how it's a very difficult thing to do, and you guys are getting it accomplished, and I can't thank you enough for it. It's recognized. Okay. On to item E. Could I get a motion for item E in its entirety?
I will make a motion.
Can I get a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Can I get a motion for item F, the consent agenda?
I will motion.
Can I get a second? Any discussion? No? All those in favor? Don't jump ahead. Thank you. On to item G, reports. Emma.
Well, first I'd like to report on all of the fall junior varsity and varsity sports have come to an end. They had great seasons, and our winter sports have started today, actually. 2 weeks ago, we celebrated varsity cheerleading team as they won sectional title, and last week they got to attend Hudson Valley to go to states, which was really exciting for them. And in addition to that, that same weekend, varsity girls volleyball team attended its first sectional title finals since 2014, and although it didn't end in their favor, it was a really great opportunity for them. Student government is ready for the NYSCLSA Leadership Conference next week in Niagara Falls, and today they had a meeting talking about it, and we're really excited for it. I'm going to be attending, and I know that we've been putting in a lot of work to get everything perfect, and we're really excited for it. The Paul V. Moore Theater concluded its last showing of their play War of the Worlds on November 8th, and they're right now working on the musical Les Mis, and everyone's really excited about that coming up. They just had their senior night for the play, so that was really great for the seniors. And lastly, our 11th and 12th graders had their National Honor Society induction ceremony that ran very smoothly, especially with all the new advisors, and we're very proud of all of them, especially the new members and also the returning members.
Was my superintendent report. So that's literally, completely all of the ones that I was going to say.
Nice job, Emma. Okay, board members report, anybody?
Steve,
You-
you
you-
talking about Liverpool?
You can talk, go ahead. Everybody's heard me quite a bit. Go.
So Tom, Steve, and I, and Aaron and Kristen, and I think Counselor Wales went over to Liverpool earlier this week, last week, to visit with them, talk to them about their progression. I think it was about,
apprenticeship program?
yeah, about 5 years ago, they basically declared a interest in creating CTE programs in the high school. So, BOCES is one pathway. They have their own CTE programs. And our focus was the pre-apprentice program, which includes it's a 2-year program, and it's pre-apprentice 1, and it's kind of goes wide, but not very deep in pretty much every area of construction. So blueprints, electrical, plumbing, woodworking, welding, concrete pouring, teaches the basics of all of that, and then they go to pre-apprentice 2, and they learn more specifically, better, deeper into some of those tasks. It's basically like a trades 101. It was fascinating. I think it would serve, leaps and bounds for some of the students that want to go into the trades but don't know what trade they want to go into. Committing to BOCES and having to pick one trade, welding or electrical, and then hitting October, November and realizing, gosh, I really am not that interested in this, and then having to finish out the year and pretty much blow a whole year of investing and getting experience and education in something that they're pretty much sure they're not going to do, is, not necessarily time well spent, I guess I'll say, but a program like this is something Steve and I have talked about for a long time. It was awesome to sit down with their whole team, the teachers that teach the program, the administrators that conceptualized it and kind of put their feet on the ground and got it running. And excitingly for them, they just finished they're finishing a capital project utilizing one of their elementary schools that closed to house the CTE programs now. Right now, they're just working out of classrooms in the high school, and for instance, the pre-apprenticeship programs have a yard basically in one of the parking lots behind the school, and they built a shed, and they do projects, small scale projects that incorporate all of the different types, the electrical and installing rafters and building all of that, roofing a structure, reading blueprints, things like that. So it was incredibly exciting. I think a great start to the conversation of potentially bringing something along those lines here. We also visited the drone CTE program that they have, another phenomenal one. I know we've had a team go look at ESM's program. Walking in classrooms, seeing students using their hands, working as groups, trying to solve problems together. The teachers were more facilitating the education, they weren't lecturing. And it was very well done. And kudos to them. Steve sent a thank you on behalf of all of us, but the amount of the amount of encouragement that the visit provided was immeasurable. And they were very welcoming. And one of the administrators there is a personal friend, but also a Central Square grad. So, they opened the doors and minds, and they said, anything we can help with, you guys let us know. Because the more schools that offer something like this to the students, the better it is for the community. There's a vacuum that exists in the trades right now in this area, and it's only going to get worse when it comes to, Micron and all of the projects that'll go along with that. And so, the students get out of this program and they have agreements with some of the unions that they start as an apprentice 2 instead of an apprentice 1. They get out with the same certifications that the BOCES kids get. So their first year, they get the OSHA certification, which is the same for BOCES, and the second year, I think it was called Precision. Yep. So they get a second certification, and it's this, what they told us was the same that the second year students at BOCES get. So, but they get exposure to the gamut of things. So it was interesting, but like I said, we spent probably 75% of our time with pre-apprentice and maybe 15% with the drones. And then the rest, we were just kind of talking. They have a health professions, I think, CTE that they have in-house.
Yeah, they let us talk to the students, and I was talking to
Oh,
one
yeah.
student. He was like, I was just asking him questions, and he's like, yeah, I drywall on the side. He's
Yeah.
like, I eat $40 an hour. I'm like, oh, okay. And he learned how to do it there.
Yep, lots of opportunities, things that all of us at this table have talked about at one point or another of, opportunities that we want for our students, especially again with what's on the horizon for this area. But, There is a lot of room for opportunity for our students to hit the ground running in life. And so we kind of set that up to get a taste of what else other schools in the area are doing to try to fit the needs of the students, fit the needs of the community, and importantly, what BOCES doesn't offer or doesn't have enough room to offer to the students that we have, that what they want, so.
What grade levels do they offer it to?
It's juniors and seniors mostly, but I think it's open once they're a sophomore, right?
Correct.
So, but
Found
they.
availability?
Yeah.
Okay.
So one thing that they talked about was, and they saw, for instance, one of the stats that they shared with us was their DDP enrollment, design drawing for production, right? And so that's a ninth grade generally class. And prior to this change, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, they had like 2/3 of the kids that are in there now. Because they increased, they didn't just make CTE programs available at the high school level, they also increased technology availability, like electives at the middle school level. And so those electives were designed to feed some of these programs. So the students in middle school get to kind of get a taste of electives, which are, I think, a quarter. They're like a quarter of the year electives. So it's not like a full year of robotics or something. It's just, you get tastes, and then it's like, oh, well, if you did really well in this and you were really interested, you might want to try the CTE. Like if they had an interest in robotics, they might, when they're doing their counseling and scheduling, well, are you interested in drones? You know, you might want to go into the drone CTE, and if you do, maybe you should take this course. And they said their DDP went through the roof because a lot of these CTE programs, DDP is helpful to just about every single one of them. And there's no prerequisites for the programs, but it's strongly encouraged that they take DDP. And so, you know, that represents the art that takes place for the art credit too. So, you know, so yeah, I mean, they put a lot of thought, they put a lot of time, but importantly, they put a lot of money behind these programs and this change. And, you know, from what we saw, it's paying dividends. So.
And it wasn't like they had to spend a lot of money repurposing courses like woodworking
Right.
to better align with what is needed out there, like talking to the labor unions and whatnot, and some of these CTE courses. But if you looked around at the equipment, we have a lot of the equipment
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah,
And
it wouldn't be a heavy lift.
Yeah, that was
In
promising.
that sense, but they did have to make some changes in personnel and things like that. They had to hire a few different teachers, so all of that comes at a cost. They did not have the offerings that we have with woodworking and stuff like that. So some of that financial piece was a big lift for them because they had to buy, plus they have 3 times the students.
Oh, yeah, they're huge.
So
And
they,
the
you know,
Micron money. They get
right.
Micron money.
They had a lot of Micron money. They were in that first group that got in, and they're part of the pilot programs. So, you know, I kept nudging, you know, our contacts, like, if you ever have an opportunity when you're talking, if they're looking for other schools to pilot, like, we literally are in their backyard. So, and we are, even the whole administrative team agreed that Central Square is even more likely to see the population increase, with respect to Micron than any of those. They just don't have room in Liverpool, Clay. They don't have the room to absorb it. So they even admitted, like, they were shocked that Central Square was not, Central Square, but Oswego County generally, but Central Square specifically, they were shocked that they were not included, that we were not included in the pilot programs. So yeah, so that was a very, very rewarding and educational
It was a
experience.
great morning.
Yeah.
And hats off to Liverpool because they, you know, it was very well supported by their leadership. I'll talk about the culture that they've created amongst their administration was awesome to see. They were jacked about it, and they were very proud of it. They realized that they had to make a cultural change within their district to bring this forward, but they were surprised by the results, and it was a great morning. It was good to see.
Well, and to follow up on that, and we had a conversation with some of them privately as we were leaving, and Steve and I and Tom, we've had some conversations about, you know, our graduates, right? And what are we doing to serve our graduates and where they're going when they leave the school? And I think it was Kristen that mentioned, or Aaron, that 40% of our kids go to college. So there's 60%, more than half, that don't.
Go to a
And so-
four-year college.
Yeah, four-year college. So what are we doing for them? You know, BOCES is certainly an option, and I'm sure there's several of the 60% that go to BOCES. But again, BOCES is wonderful in what it does, but if you're not 100% sure, there's a good chance that you aren't going to go to BOCES because you're really committing to welding or electrical. And, you know, that's what I loved about this program is it's not, the way they set it up, it's another class. It's not, you know, I have to leave the school, I can't play sports, you know, it's just, they go to pre-apprenticeship. They go every day. They have black scheduling just like us, but they go every day. So it's not an every other day block, it's every day program, but the rest of their schedule is no different than if they were taking bio and math first period. You know, like they have all the access to electives and core classes, and they see their peers, and they eat lunch, and it was just, it was great. And the last thing that I'll say is it was eye-opening and incredibly, almost heartwarming, but rewarding to see a team that, you know, has worked very hard, and they've had to make a lot of changes, and they shared some of those pitfalls and stuff with us and what to avoid, but that they were willing to just share that work product.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times when people are in the realms and they create something like that that's unique in the area, they're very tight and they don't want to share the information. They want it to be their program, and that was complete opposite of what they did with us. I mean, they pretty much were willing to hand us everything that we needed to, all the work product that they had at that point, and it was fantastic. And again, we can't thank them
But I
enough.
think it's important that we said 40% to go to a four-year college, and that could be misleading. So we have a lot of students that are highly successful that are in BOCES, go into the trades, and are making six figures, literally right out. And they were talking about technicians right now are starting at $100,000. When I blew my flat tire a few months back, the student that pulled over in a van, I recognized him. He was like, "Hey, Calabufo," and he looked at it, and he helped me, and Vern Sunday he figured out how to get the lug nuts off because there was a protective thing on it. And I asked him what he's doing. He never went to college. He's working in the collision department at Burdick. And I said, "If you don't mind me asking," he's like, "Well, with overtime, I make $97,000. And I'm like, oh, okay, my first year starting teacher was $27,000. So,
Right.
so I don't want people to think like that's the only pathway. Those days are gone.
Far gone.
If a kid wants to go to college, so be it. That's a great pathway. But the skills trades right now is booming.
Right. Well, and they shared the stories. They shared a few success stories just from students that went through this program. The program's been in existence for about 5 years, like I said, so they've got a few, you know, learning curves throughout that period, but they've had students that get recruited right out of their high school program by Lockheed Martin, you know, to go in the drones program, I think it was.
$103,000.
Right, with no student debt. And it's not even a trade. It's just, they got the exposure. All of these CTE programs you have to have industry partners, and the industries come in and help them work on capstone projects. I mean, they get exposure. It's a wonderful program.
We're not knocking the college pathway.
No,
It's
not
just-
at all.
It's not for everybody.
It's not for everyone.
And it's not that it's less than.
Right. Well, and it's not knocking BOCES either, because that's super successful for people that know exactly what they want to do. But it was eye-opening to see a program that's, you know, kind of catches somebody that's in a I don't know stage. And it gives them the opportunity to expose themselves to some things that they may not have otherwise been exposed to.
Yeah, because in one classroom, and then I'll wrap it up, be done, is that you had a curtain with welding going on, and in the other corner, you had a chop saw where they were cutting things up. They had a saw, table saw going up over here. They had a team of kids that were building toolboxes, welding. They had a shed outside. They had done some concrete work. On the floor. So instead of, I just envision a student, you know, you interested to go to BOCES? Yeah. What about welding? Yeah, that sounds cool. Off they go at $17,000, $18,000 to the
Right.
district, where this could be, oh, no, I didn't like welding at all when I was in that one class. So it really, to me, it preempts, you know, just gives them exposure to what is, because if you're not getting that at home, you're not welding and splitting wood, you know, all the things that folks do have opportunity to do, and it really, I think it helps in how it goes, so.
Well, and the last
Great-
thing
great program.
that I'll say about that is we talked about we have a lot of courses at this school that cover almost everything pre-apprenticeship program at Liverpool does. And so, like Tom said, there's there's ways that could be tweaked to try to offer something like this. I mean, there's obviously, this is very early stages, ideas of things that we could offer our students, but when Steve and I were leaving, you know, you walk out of there, and it's like, if I was a student, I would want to take that instead of woodworking. I would want to take that instead of shop. I would, you know, it's going to cover all of those classes, and you come out with certifications, but if I still went to college and law school like my path was, I know how to run the basics to install a switch at my house. I know how to look at my roof and say, well, geez, that could be the problem, or I know how to build my own shed. I mean, you walk out with real life skills, as opposed to, you know, things that maybe you're not necessarily going to use once you get out of school, so.
You did my report. Well done. So we move on.
Okay, on to item H. Could I get a motion for item H in its entirety?
I'll motion.
Can I get a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? On to item I, adjournment. Can I get a
Oh, there you
motion?
Nope, yeah, there's
We're all
no,
back there if you had any questions about the course, but
no executive.
just in case you
No.
had.
Oh, no questions back there? Oh, okay.
No questions for
No,
them?
no for them.
Oh, no, for
They're
them?
doing the courses.
Oh, for the courses, yes. Oh, is that why you're there?
Yes.
Sorry.
That's what they, just in case you guys have questions, we've always had them there.
Okay, all right.
But it was very, very well detailed that you guys had already got and seen, so.
Yep.
But again, the CPR first aid, that's another one. It's like, it's a wonderful course to offer our students.
Yeah.
You know, they could save a life.
Absolutely. Item I, can I get a motion for item I?
I'll motion.
Can I get a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you so much, and thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So, what happened?